All right, I think we're live. We're doing the streamer thing where we got to say, I think we're live. But welcome to the first ever episode of the Klung Zone Basketball Association podcast. It's been a busy summer in the CZBA. We just finished up the annual draft. It's a big night. But here to discuss it, we have what the fuck? We have VJ and Brennan.
What's up, everybody?
Hey guys.
Right. So, I think we wanted to get. Did we want to get started with the draft itself, or go into the trade statistics? Either one.
I want to talk about the trade statistics because I feel like I've
Okay.
kind of been teasing people about the stats of it all for a little bit,
Yeah.
and also I think it kind of paints a good picture to talk about why this draft was so important, and also why drafts in general end up being very important in the landscape of our league. So yeah, I think that might be the best place to get started. So the stats that Sal's about to pull up, I have one caveat there, which is that this is ignoring our inaugural draft. So any trades you made during the inaugural draft are not part of this, because I kind of took that all as part of, these are the trades these are the drafts or the picks you made during the inaugural draft. So I'm not counting those trades. So yeah, Falk winner by 5. Baller away by like 5 trades. I think those top 2 I think are pretty obvious. I think Falk's ones are especially impressive when you consider the stats that he just wasn't there in the 23-24 season and he still racked up 49 trades.
Yeah.
And then Baller, obviously, notorious dealer, 44. And then shout out to Tom Foolery, who made 1 trade in 23-24 before getting canceled. And then also Aaron Sniper, I didn't realize, made 12 trades, who is now owned by Ty, who has racked up 24 trades himself, which is also impressive in its own right. But yeah, actually, also shout out to Fatty, who is only here for a couple months, but made 25 trades, which is also an impressive number. But yeah,
they weren't all good trades.
No, none of
A
them
lot
were
of trades,
good
not
trades whatsoever.
I mean, I think when you look at this, though, like, it's part of it is some of these teams have to do this, right? So for Falk, like, what's his path forward with the team he inherited besides just the churn, right? And I think that's why his team looks better than it maybe did when he got it. It just churned, right? And Baller, he's just so active, and I think with an older team, you kind of have to be. I think what's going to be interesting for Baller moving forward, and VJ, you and I have talked about this, is now that he doesn't have short-term pick assets and his team is getting older, I think he's going to have a harder time moving off guys because he wants to recollect, that asset. And I think he's going to hold maybe more than he used to. Do you see that too?
Yeah, I found that to be true actually for both the top 2 guys, and also Sal a little bit. I think, like for Baller, and actually let's start with Falk because he's the easiest one to explain. Because a lot of these trades in 24-25, it's very easy to make those trades when you don't care about any of the players on your roster. But now Falk has like clawed himself into a position where he has some players that he cares about, and there are good players on his roster. And also you just get attached, and it's like harder to churn these guys out the way you do when you just don't give a fuck about them. And then Baller, I think now there's so much weight to every trade because, one, he's built a reputation, not just in terms of like the whole scamming thing that we do with him, but also just in terms of like when you get a reputation as a good trader, people are more hesitant to trade with you because they think that there's something up. Like they think they're fucking up somehow because they've seen Baller win so many trades, and it like just makes you pause before you do any deal with Baller. And also like you mentioned, like he's running out of assets, and also like when you're trying to contend and you don't have room for error, it's also hard to find those trades. Even more so, especially when like LeBron probably was easier to trade last year than he was this year. Embiid probably, like all the old guys that he has, like they're easier to trade when they're 1 year younger.
Yeah. Well, you just don't see too many. I mean, how often do you get a veteran for veteran, like a win now for win now trade in this league, right? It's almost always I'm selling this older guy for either prospects or picks. And very rarely, I think Daniel's good at that. Daniel's good at that, of making this kind of player for player trades, but you just don't see it, right? And so like I feel like Baller's going to struggle with that. Okay, I want to move LeBron, but I also want to compete in my division. My division just got a lot better. What does a trade even look like for that, right? It's just going to get harder for them.
Yeah. Also, like in terms of the different types of, we do have a graphic for the different types of trades that we typically do. We have a division based on like, is it picks only, is it players only, is it multi-team, and all that. So yeah, it's kind of cut off a little bit. Okay, there we go. But yeah, we typically, like year one, we didn't see any pick only trades. And then like last year we saw 9 pick only trades. And then this year pre-draft, we saw 7. But also like an interesting thing, like 24, 25, somehow we saw like the more trades than in 25, 26. But yeah, also deadline.
I mean, there's the attachment piece there though. Like it is interesting, right? But in 24, 25, that was probably the perfect combination of, I wasn't too attached to my team yet, but I kind of know where my team is trending. Like I have a season and a half of results probably by the deadline. So I'll be interested to see if that continues to go down or where it kind of stagnates eventually.
You know, I think it's probably going to be like a bell curve for this, where like you start low and then like no trades, and then for a couple years it's going to be high trades when people are not attached, and then it's going to be low again where people start to get attached to their guys again, and then I think it's going to come to a point where you're like, I don't care anymore, and then it goes back up. I think we might be a bit on the downtrend now for a couple of reasons, and
we'll draft. Talk about this. We can talk about that more, but I think that 2027 draft is going to impact this a lot.
Yeah. And I think we can take a look at like which times we're most active as a league, which is another graphic we have in terms of like, when do we typically do trades? And so when I was doing this trades, what it pretty much came down to was when it's most active is like during the draft or like pre-draft. And then after that, it's kind of grim. You don't see much activity. And then there's a little bit of a spike at the start of the season, typically. Like you see some of these players and you're like ready to let them go, or like injuries or lineup stuff happens and you're ready to let them go. And then obviously real trade deadline and then our trade deadline are other two places to spike. But like during the off season, especially before the draft, is when we see the most movement. And we actually matched the exact number of trades we had last year at 20 this year. Pre-draft. So if you look at those, like 20 in July last year and then 20 in August this year. So yeah, these are, which is like something I've been telling people, is like the league kind of goes quiet for a while. So if you don't strike when everyone's like active and willing to make deals, more than likely you'll miss out. So like if you're somebody that wants to trade, like you got to strike while the iron's hot, otherwise you're going to miss out.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk about that more, especially when we get into the first pick of the draft. But I think Ty is someone that really does a good job of waiting for these periods. I mean, I tried messaging him about the first overall pick all year, right? Or like ever since he had it. And he's like, I'm waiting until draft day. I'm waiting until draft day. And the value you get at these time periods is just so much better than before. It's definitely real. And I do just want to call out what's on the screen. Karg, if you are watching, notice the draft happened in August this year and not July. I mean, maybe that's something we talk about on the pod too, is the pros and cons of doing it a little later, because it was different. I feel like doing it so much later from Summer League, it definitely, I think, had an impact on the second round, third round. People had more time. So anyway, we can talk about that more as we get into the draft.
Yeah, and I think we can start talking about the trades that happen now, like, or we can talk about like the draft order and everything. But real quick before that, Brennan, you and I had talked about this right before the draft, because I was looking at, so we had discussed this a couple times before. Over the last couple of years, guards are the ones that get moved most often, and it feels like there were a lot of times over the past couple of years where every good team needed a guard, like a high level guard, and they just couldn't get them. I think Flop is a good example of this, where he has like a bunch of centers. Like obviously centers are great for fantasy output, so a lot of good teams tend to have a lot of centers, and then you might end up in the situation where there's not a lot of good guards. But what we've seen in like 25 and then especially the 2026 draft, excuse me, this influx of really good guards. So the number of guards that are available in the league have gone up. The number of guards that are like in rotations has gone up. And at the same time as that, the 2026 draft had 2 good centers.
Yeah, like real centers, right?
Yeah.
Well,
and
JQ, but like obviously, like JQ has that potential, right? But with the injuries, so yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I wouldn't count him as like I would say 3, like Merez, Hans, and Mara are probably like the only real centers.
True 5s, yeah.
Yeah, and I wouldn't like. I don't think Quaintance is a player until I see him like actively play basketball. It's been 2 years at this point. Like I don't think we can count him as a player until we see him exist.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then we were talking about this pre-draft. Is like I think what's going to happen over the next couple of years is the price on guards are going to go real down because now every team has a guard, or every team has at least 2 or 3 guards that they like, and then I think the price of centers is going to go up, because there's not centers coming in the draft next year either, which is why I think getting the centers in this draft was probably important. And I also think it's like whoever traded for centers, which I'm biased in that, but we could talk about that. But I think getting centers, I think getting centers in this draft when you can is probably important. I also think like in going with like what we were discussing, if you don't have a center right now, it's possible you go until the deadline without getting one because the market just dies.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, so I do agree with that. And before I get to there, like I think when you look at where the league is going, teams want 3 ball handlers, right? 3 guards, and typically bigger guards, but they're playing smaller ones there. We saw in the playoffs, teams got away with it a little bit more than they used to. And so I think that definitely is going to have an impact on fantasy too, right? If more teams are playing 3 guard lineups, there's more guards on the court. And what that means is they're squeezing true 5s. So I do agree with you. I think there's real NBA changes in usage that are going to impact how our league values different players. I do think with that though, like I'm a Sixers fan, obviously, so I know the backup center market pretty closely. It's horrible, right? And I feel like teams actually really paid for backup 5s this summer in real life. But that, I feel like it'll be not easier than ever, but I feel like the 5 is something you can find in waivers more than you can these other positions. I mean, how often do you find a guard who is going to, I mean, besides Mickey March, is going to give you 25 fantasy points? But like you picked up Dylan Carwell and 10 rebounds, 2-3 blocks, and all of a sudden you're a 20 plus fantasy point scorer. So I do agree it's going to continue to get harder in general because the availability pool is going to keep shrinking. But I do think if you're someone like Parm, who's listening to the pod right now, he needs centers. He's been actively posting about it. If he's churning the waivers, there is a decent chance he finds a guy who sticks. I mean, look at Jock Landale, for example. I crushed Baller and Falk on that trade last year. He's a guy that was picked up on waivers, and now, I mean, you probably are paying a pretty good second or a first round pick for him, right? So you can find those guys, I guess is my point.
Yeah. I think with that, we can probably get started with the draft. And I think the first trade was mine, which I said it on draft night, but I got fucking bent over a table by Ty on this trade.
He's brutal, man. He's tough to negotiate with because he's not afraid to like just ghost you, and he doesn't give you much information back and forth. He knows what he wants.
Yeah, and
last year,
I was literally like telling him like, let's do 20. I'll do 20 because I had done like the math numbers on all this. I had like done a couple mocks. I was like 20 is probably my line. And he like would not let go. And in my head, I'm like, this is 2 spots. Like we're arguing over 2 spots. And it just got to a point where I was just like, I've waited all these years to be able to be in a position where I can make a trade like this when it's, available to me to get the player I want. And I said this the other day in the chat too, is like knowing that Graves was available at 18 I don't know if I would have made the trade. I think I would have probably gambled on just getting whoever's available at 2. But I think for me, it's like Boozer was my favorite player in the draft, so I think it was like, yeah. I think for fantasy, I think either one of these guys would have been fine.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I just believe in Cam more, and I don't like the idea of like having to have stakes in a player that I don't believe in as much, as good as he probably would have been for fantasy. I personally, I would not grade me well on that trade. That was a personal investment kind of trade that I don't know that I would have recommended any other person do.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, you look at the hit rate for, Graves was a good get at 18, right? But like the hit rate there to go get your guy, and if I had traded for the first pick, so I had famously been trying to trade Chet for 1.01, Boozer would have been my pick too over AJ. Now part of that is I have right, so I had some investment there in the Wizards already, which I don't recommend. But Boozer, you're going to get 10 rebounds, right? You're going to get 2 stocks a game. You're going to get at least 15-ish points, right? And so I think one thing I've learned over the last few years playing this league is the picking strategy is real, right? Like the fact that you have to pick the games has a real impact on who you should roster. And Boozer, to me, when I was thinking about it, I felt like I wouldn't have to worry too much about picking the right game with him. I would always get a steady stream of points, and some weeks I'd get lucky and he'd crush. And then with AJ though, I was kind of worried about, especially like I don't know what the hell the Wizards are doing right now, right, in real life. So I would grade you fine on this. I mean, especially with the team context. But even outside of that, I mean, I think to go get your guy, I value that so much. So I was a little surprised by the trade, but I thought it was a win for both teams.
Yeah,
I think the thing that finally skewed me in terms of like really trying to go get one, because I got, for a large part of the offseason, I got to a point where I was like, I'll take whoever. But then I saw that Boozer was listed at C or PF, and I was like, fuck, I kind of need centers. My center situation was a little grim. So I thought it would be a good way for me to kind of knock both out. If he was marked as like SFPF, which is what I was expecting from Sleeper, then I probably wouldn't have been as aggressive with it. But once I saw the CPF, I kind of felt obligated to.
I think he'll keep that too. Like, I don't think that's going to go away. Like, I think he'll probably keep that. He'll play 5 in the league. Like,
yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then I think we can talk about the Sauce trade, which, dude,
this was surprising to me. I didn't expect. So when Ty makes this trade, I'm like, okay, he made the trade because he valued AJ and Cam the same, right? And he picked up an extra pick, which will probably be a theme of Ty's trades. Did he really need an extra pick? But anyway, I thought he probably values them the same. Go get your guy. And then he makes the trade. And I like all 4 of the guys. I was trying to trade Chet for anywhere in the top 4. But the guaranteedness, in my opinion, of the top 3 versus Caleb, like this blew my mind. So did that kind of go through your head too when it happened?
Yeah, I was a little confused. I think I got a little sense of like Ty's, like he's got a little bit of Danny Ainge brain in terms of like, I'll just get the assets and I want to win the deal. Or maybe that's Maury brain, I don't know. But I feel like it's more Danny Ainge. But for me, I know he ended up picking Caleb, and I think we'll talk about that in a second. Yeah. But I don't see it with Caleb. I think his defense is wildly overrated. And then I think his fantasy production in the summer league was like chucking threes. He's not a good rim scorer. He's a good passer, but exclusively to centers, which the Bulls don't own right now. They don't have any centers.
Real centers. I mean, they got Jalen Smith, but like they don't like playing him. So
yeah. So it's like, I don't understand where his fantasy production is going to come from if he's not making threes. And then maybe that gets better over time. But it's also like, I don't know. I don't see it with Caleb. Like if he had done this trade for number 3, I think I can make the case. And I think we can talk about that in a second. But yeah, I don't get it.
But the haul he got, I mean, regardless of who he took with Caleb, though, I mean, and I want to be a little soft on this because apparently Sauce didn't know that it was his pick he was sending. But like to
No,
get
that's
Sauce's
bad. That
no,
makes
like
it worse
I
for
get
me.
that's bad. I get that's bad, but obviously that's bad. But the fact that he didn't know, like he didn't think he was sending that value. Now the fact he didn't know that obviously is the really bad part. But the fact that he didn't think about it, but this haul is crazy. I mean, to still get Caleb, and we'll talk about pros and cons of that, but then to get Santi, which I'm a little hesitant of what his fantasy value is going to be moving forward with his trade in real life. But then you get that 2028 first, like that draft is going to be loaded. Sauce has limited paths to contention, right? So, I mean, even if Caleb flames out faster than the other guys do, or just doesn't hit his potential, Danny Ainge's brain for sure, but you may still look back and go, oh, it's a pretty good trade for Ty.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the trade process because that pick is just too good. I think to like because if that was a 2027 first, I'd be like, what the fuck is Ty doing?
It's
but
different.
2028 draft is supposed to be good, so I think the value was good. I think also if you're like taking a shot at like Caleb could be better than AJ, I think that's a fine shot to take.
I wouldn't, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah, like I think considering the draft capital he got back, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Also, maybe that Caleb was just his guy. Yeah.
Could be.
Personally, I feel like as far as what Sauce got out of this, one was his guy. And then two, I think that AJ will be really good in fantasy because he is a guy that will shoot a lot and he will get a lot of free throws. I think the Wizard situation is obviously weird, but I think he has too much cachet even among like real life players for him to not get like the usage that he commands. So I think this is fine.
In our league too, by the way, like that cachet, like if he wants to flip him 2-3 years from now, like he'll probably get pretty good value back, right? I think our league's pretty high on AJ.
Yeah, for fantasy for sure. So we can talk about Darren here. I think I've been harping on this a lot lately, is the 3-point shots stuff. 3 points count double in our league, basically. So you get the 3 points from, because each point counts as one fantasy point in general. And then you do, when you make a 3-pointer, you get an extra 0.5. So every 3-point shot made is actually 3.5 points that you get, which is one of the reasons why I had Khan so high last year, who I believed in as a player in real life, but also for fantasy. The Charlotte situation was so good that I knew that he'd chuck a lot of threes, and that would be like 3.5 times 5 or 6 or whatever it was. So yeah, threes are highly valuable. And then the other thing that's really valuable is stocks, steals and blocks. And Darren is really good at those three things. Like those are the things that he's great at. I think one easy way for a lot of people to look at this would be like Reed Shepherd was kind of mediocre last year for in real life oops, but he still had
his fantasy floor is really high though, right? I mean, that's what makes me so sick about not having him is like, this is your at his worst, he's still your third best guard on your team, starting. And so, and I think the funny thing about Darren and that being a strength for him is the casual, like if you weren't really paying attention to his numbers, you wouldn't know he's a stocks guy, right? I mean, he's a stocks demon. I shouldn't even say he's a stocks guy. He's a demon. And I think he's viewed as, he's just this scoring guard, right? And all he does is chuck. His game's pretty well rounded, especially the defensive side. So I always found that interesting, and I'm sure Sexberg took that into consideration and knew that. But I think a lot of people don't know that his floor in fantasy is really high because of that. Like if he goes, if he shoots tour dates, he's still going to have pretty decent fantasy nights.
Yeah. I would like for anyone looking at the Darren Peterson, I think I kind of hinted at this in our chats, but he's basically like for fantasy, he's a boosted Reed Shepherd. Like he's Reed Shepherd times 1.5 or like 2, depending on the night. But yeah, his floor is just so high in our league. I think I could make the case for him going 2 over AJ. If you really believe in the touch and him producing stocks, because the offensive context in Utah is pretty good. So like Will Hardy's a good offensive coach. So I think you can make the case for his fantasy. Like his fantasy production being worth taking over AJ if you don't trust the Wizards. I think there's a case there, but I think Sexberg also got lucky as fucking lottery night. Like, this is a fucking heist.
Yeah, again, by the way, it's like every lottery moves up.
And it's so it's frustrating to me because I'm like, you don't think about this at all. Like, you don't worry about, like, I have had so many bad trades that I've made to make sure that I get good lottery position, and Sexberg is like not thinking about that at all. And
he is a little bit. I will give him some credit there. Like, he's famously the guy you almost make a trade with, right, in the league.
Yeah.
And I feel like usually when it's happening, there is strategy there. I mean, he's not doing the trade because he wants to be difficult. There's a thought process there. And like when Halliburton got hurt, it was, well, why would I make my team too good, right? Because I can get in the lottery. So I agree with you. It is frustrating because he's not the most active transaction owner in the league, but he keeps getting the luck. But I do think he's putting thought into the strategy piece of it.
Yeah, no, what I was specifically referring to is like dumping good players because your PF is too high.
Yeah, you were full on tanking your max points for.
Yeah, which is like, granted, not a lot of people were doing. I think it's like me, Sauce, and probably just us two, really.
Probably just you two, yeah. And how many true first overall picks have you gotten in 3 years?
One.
One.
Actually, two. If you think about the 2024 trade, but I traded that away.
Basically. Yeah, you had it and then you traded it. Yeah.
Yeah, I gave you SAR. Hello, Brennan.
Famous Sexberg guy.
Available for trade.
Sexberg, you know, they're saying you can't finish deals. You know,
I've tried for this guy, Sal. This is my example. I've tried to trade for Brandon, and he'll go, no, because I think he'll help me win next year. And like,
stealing.
Just trade me the guy, man.
It's fucked up. No,
but yeah, he did well. He did well. And I do think this is like going into Caleb now, and we've kind of already talked about him as a player, but to me, I always viewed this as a top 3 draft with, if you really like the 4th guy, you could call it a top 4 draft. So this is where the value really changed for me. I'm a little higher on Caleb than you are. I don't fully buy the 3-point shot that we saw in Summer League, but I do think he's enough of an athlete and active enough of a player. And I think the Bulls, while that position is crowded, it's so bleak for them. I think he's going to be good enough that like they feature him. So I do think the volume is going to end up being there. But I think compared to the top 3 guys, like the questions around those top 3 guys and the questions around Caleb are just completely different tiers of questions, right? So I'm anxious to see how it goes. I do think Ty, in my opinion, won this trade if we're doing winners and losers. But there is a chance where we look back at it and Sauce feels good about walking away with a 2-tier, 3-tier better player than what Ty got.
Yeah.
Caleb, what I'll say about Caleb is that I believe in him on a human level, in that I trust that he'll put in a shit ton of work and that he'll really care about the games. And that very well could lead to a lot of fantasy production. And I don't think his context in UNC was that amazing. So like UNC was it was UNC, right? I'm not missing anything.
Yeah, you're
pretty
right.
sure it was UNC. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so yeah. I think I believe in him enough as a human that I can believe in a shot for him to be really good or on the level of these other guys. He's also obviously very competitive.
Yeah.
So I think this will. Yeah.
He's raw, but he's a guy you can bet on, right? I mean, I think that pretty much sums him up.
I think we can talk about. For me, this was a surprise for me too.
Yeah, Sal, do you want to put up the guard graphic? And I think maybe we just talk about. I mean, so this is the order in which they were drafted in our league. But yeah, VJ, do you want to kind of just talk through each of these picks? Because there weren't a ton of trades around these picks.
There was the big one for mine.
Yeah, 5. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can talk about that one. So Parm and I had discussed a 5 for SR straight up, which was one that I was like willing to make because at 5 at the time I was like, I'm probably just going to take Yaxel at 5. And then I spoke to Brennan about it, and he was like, just because you would piss the pick away on Yaxel doesn't mean that it doesn't have more value than that.
Right.
And I was like, you know what? That's a fair point. That's a fair point. So I ended up holding on to the trade at the time, and I didn't think anything would come of it because every time I went to Parn to discuss number 5, because I knew that he would want Acuff. Every time I would discuss it with Parm, it was always, I want Edie, you don't want to give up Edie. And at some point in the 2 months that we had between like when I had last discussed it with Parm and the draft actually happening, Parm's opinion on Edie had soured. And so he was more willing to include Edie on draft night. And then I got lucky because I was able to pull him into the call. So I was able to like talk to him as opposed to like chatting away on Discord, which helped me a lot. So we came to the deal. It was difficult to let go of. I think I'd let go of 20, 22, and like one other pick on top of 5. Do you have the trade up?
It was your pick, 20, 22. That's it. Those 3.
Oh, and then he sent 29 back to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was like a trade I wanted Asar and Edie. And I liked Mikhail a lot for the same reasons I liked Darren, because I knew that he would chuck a lot of threes, and threes are worth a lot of points in our league. So I was going to go Mikhail. I was pretty dead set on him. And then Parm and I came to a deal on draft night invoice, which I did not. Nice picture of Parm. I just saw his picture pop up. And yeah, the other thing that really helped me here is the synergy with me having Boozer. Boozer and Edie will go great together in the game. And also, if like one's injured, the other one's usage should go up. And then that kind of made it like easier for me to sell myself on it. Asar, I believed in enough to swap the 5th pick for. Stocks are rated so high in our league, but he's also just like super athletic, and I have him in already. And I think it's also like it's interesting because different people thought different things about who I was giving up the 5th pick for. Because Brennan, from your perspective, I gave up 5th pick for Edie. In my mind, I gave up 5th pick for Asar, and then 20 and 22 for Edie. But either way, for me, I think I'm comfortable with this because I believe in the talent that I got, and then also getting a center in this draft that I could like. Considering where the center position is going next draft, I think it made sense for me.
Yeah.
So
I think it made sense for both.
Yeah. I mean,
is there anything else you want to add on that?
Yep. I mean, mostly that I knew Parm liked Acuff. Parm got his guy. So I'm very happy for him.
I knew he liked Acuff, but I thought for sure, I guess I thought Wagler is probably going to go more likely at his next pick, which we'll talk about. But I was a little surprised by this. And before I talk about the player too much, I knew you guys were talking, and you and I had been talking about it. I do think it was for Edie plus Osser, but I think that's what makes it an interesting and I think good, somewhat fair trade is the fact that you can see it as being either player. So I think both teams did good here, and I think it speaks to something we talked about earlier. Where are these teams going? Like, I think this league changed a lot during draft night. And you and Parm are 2 of the top examples of that. I think you're competing now more. So you turned a pick into players, which is something people in fantasy hoops tell you that you don't do, right? And you finally did it. It's something that maybe Ty is going to have to start doing here soon, is trades like this. And then for Parm, I think Parm's such a weird team. Like, everyone's buying stocks in Parm. On our new stock market, right? But at the same time, you look at his team and it's so volatile where it can go. And I think the way he looked at it was Edie and Osser are playing a big role in that, of the highs and lows of my team. Can I use this draft to, which again, this is one of the best drafts we've had in a little bit, to get guys who I can kind of rebuild my team around. Maybe they're gonna be more consistent. I mean, you can dislike or like the players he got, I think it's confirmed all three are going to get some pretty good volume on their rookie deal, right? And I think he needed that consistency. So I think the outlook for Parm's team changed a lot after this trade, and in a good way. While at the same time, you can definitely question, hey, you gave up a really good center prospect, that's flashed, and then a guy who, if one or two things really improve for him, whether it's minutes or his three getting better, he's going to be a really good fantasy player. So I think it's an interesting trade. I think it was a good trade, and I'm interested. And again, it just goes to speak to where your two teams are going. And I think both of you got what you wanted out of the deal, which is really what matters at the end of the day. And then Acuff as a player, I don't want to focus too much on the trade because there was a player taken. I mean, scoring guard on the Kings. I mean, again, you can say what you want about his defense. It's obviously horrible. The guy's going to chuck, right? And we saw it in Summer League. Even when the shot wasn't going in, the box score looked good. And fantasy is a box score league. With definitely the impact of the advanced stuff matters. But in Sacramento, I think it matters a lot less. So I think it was a perfect team fit and player combo for fantasy purposes. Now for Acuff, the real life player, they're going to let him get away with a lot of bad habits that he probably shouldn't be allowed to get away with to reach his peak potential. But I think Parm got a guy that's going to put up pretty big fantasy numbers year one.
I think he, with the advanced stat stuff, because I've talked about this in our league chat before, where I'm pretty much a pretty strong believer in real life matters for fantasy. And I was pretty strongly sided on that with Cam Thomas, who I think Acuff is a better player than Cam Thomas, especially as a passer. So I'm not trying to make a one-to-one comparison there, but it's more so of because he's a rookie and he's a high drafted rookie and he had a lot of stock coming into the draft, he is guaranteed to get 6 years of pure chucking, for sure.
Yeah.
So even if Acuff ends up being out of the league in that 7th year, Parm's going to get a good fantasy asset for the next 6 years minimum. So I think this is a good pick. It's one that I wouldn't have made because I believe in Mikal more, mostly because of the threes. But I think it's one that makes sense.
Well, and I think it goes one of the team building strategies. So I talked a bit about why I value a guy who I don't have to worry about picking their games as much. On the flip side, Acuff may be harder to pick, especially in year one. But he's going to have, we should probably do a line on this, is 50, a 50-point fantasy game, right? And how many rookies can really give you that? I think he's going to have a game where all the threes go in. He's playing for the Kings, right? And he's just going to blow up. And I think the other thing too with him is he's seen as a scorer. He put up pretty good assist numbers in college, and they do have some shooters. So again, I think his fantasy production is actually going to be pretty good, with some of the highs being star levels highs, at least from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, and then Parm actually made a good point. He just brought up, can we address the Jalen Green of it all? Which is one, I think Darius probably has a better chance of panning out from here onwards, maybe than Jalen.
I think he's
Green.
More skilled than Jalen, which matters.
Yeah, for sure. But also Jalen Green is a good fantasy asset because he chucks threes.
On a team that him, right? I mean, that's part of it too.
Yeah, and Houston let him chuck a lot of threes. He just didn't make a ton of them, but he has more freedom now than he did in Houston as well. Because under Ime, he had less freedom to fuck around, but he has more chances to just shoot the shit out of the ball now than he did in Houston. So actually, I think that's maybe kind of an apt comparison in terms of Jalen Green's advanced stats are not going to be very good, but he's in year 5 now, and he's going to be in the league for 4 more years, probably at the very least. And he's going to be a good fantasy asset all those years because he's a guy that can chuck a lot of threes. And that makes you good in our fantasy league. That I think probably brings us to our next one, which is Mikal, which I fucking love going into in our draft room, and it just says woke moralist to woke moralist because he traded for his pick back. But I think this is a great pick for Kev. We covered the 3-point stuff already. He's going to be able to chuck in Brooklyn.
He's the best passer in the draft, in my opinion, too. Right? So there's the chucking, and I think he's going to be a big assist guy, especially with the team they have.
Yeah, the one thing that did worry me is like his turnover numbers were pretty high.
Yeah, but
in both.
the passes he's trying, like I think Maxi's a good example. Like people like to talk about his low turnover numbers. He's not really trying difficult passes, and for me, and it was a limited data set too, right? Like he didn't play very many Louisville games, so that's something to look at for sure. But the type of passes he was trying to make, I think, feeds into that number.
He's got high feel. I think Mikal has high feel. So you can take a gamble on him improving the turnover stuff. In my perspective, turnovers are turnovers, and turnovers are negative 0.5 in our league in terms of points.
True. Yeah.
So it does matter, but it was just as simple as like he's going to be in Brooklyn with Yegor. I have Yegor. If one of them goes down, the other's usage is going to go up. They're both going to chuck threes. I feel like it was a straightforward pick for me, but I like Mikal for the same reasons we've talked about a few times now. So I think this was a good pick by Kev, who I didn't like that he ended up with Trey Johnson. I don't remember the exact trade that happened in, but he has Trey Johnson now.
He's traded with South, yep. Which was originally a trade with me. That was the original Ja Morant trade, actually.
The Trey Johnson centered Ja Morant trade? Really?
Oh shit, yeah.
I traded Ja for the pick that turned into Trey, and then Trey.
Well, that pick I think turned into Khan, because I traded that to you, VJ, for Khan. And then,
I give you a sec. Like I was like 95% sure that you'd take Trey, but I didn't want to leave it up to that 5% chance that you wouldn't take Trey and take Khan instead. And I was like, I don't care about this fucking second. I'll give you a second round pick, whatever. Let me take Khan.
And then, but the genius that I am, I turned Trey into Jordan Poole.
Yep, similar players, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think Trey's kind of fucked in Washington. Like if let's talk like, because in my mind, AJ's a 2 guard in a forward's body, so I don't see where Trey's minutes are going to come from. He's not good enough to be a point guard. I just don't like. He's an elite 3-point shooter, but where is he going to get the opportunity to chuck?
It's going to take some time. He's got a few guys, like, to bring it back to Kev. Like, I think this pick works for him. I think Mikal will be good year one, but will he be his best? I mean, not many rookies are, right? But his team is so young, and his team building strategy has been so interesting. I don't want to out like a current negotiation that he's sending out, but like he's constantly sending, hey, I'll send you this veteran. I don't want picks. I want young players. And I don't care really how good they are. I just want them to be young players that get minutes, whether or not it's good or bad. And so I think his team is going to be interesting to watch. I'm a little surprised, and I have the two of you on call here, like that Kev pick has a lot of value next year. It is kind of a weaker draft, but I think people aren't really noticing how young his team is. So I'm a little interested to see what VJ turns that pick into, or if you keep it. But I like this pick for Kev. I think, in my opinion, Mikal was my top guard. Like if I had traded up to 5 where Parm did, I would have taken Mikal. I think it'll take him a few years to really grow into who he'll be. That Louisville season had a lot of highs and a lot of lows. But I think it's a good match for what he has on his team.
Yeah. And then actually, I just noticed this, like, as we were talking about it, is like I have Parm's pick and Kev's pick, who picked back-to-back in the draft. And we were just talking about them back-to-back, which, by the way, Kev's pick is on the block. So if anyone wants to come,
I heard for KD.
Yeah.
But we don't need to get into a live negotiation on the pod.
We don't need to do that again. But yeah, I do think that Kev is one of the few teams that has a lot of pathways to go either direction. And because he has good old players and he has good young players as well, with maybe an exception here or there, but he has fantasy tradable assets to pick a direction, which a lot of teams don't have. So I think Kev's in a great position, and I think Mikal is the best pick here, probably. The best pick here, I would say. And then I'll let you take it away on Braden Burries. I think you're the best equipped to speak on this.
Well, I do want to speak really. Oh yeah. So we'll focus on the guards and come back to the Yaxel pick. I was a little surprised. So mentioning the guards, I was a little surprised Wagler didn't go at 7. And we'll talk about that more. I think when we get to the Wagler pick, we can bring it back to Yaxel because they're combined. But yeah, I took Burries. VJ, I've been kind of a Burries guy for a while. I was big on him all the way back in January. I think a lot of people, I think you got me on this, and it's funny that this is the player that makes me feel this way, but Khan, I think when you look at his freshman season, he was a winning player, even though he didn't have the usage. Like all of his advanced team stats were really good. And then he had the body that let him translate into the league. And obviously, being one of the best 3-point shooters in the league definitely had the most impact. But I think him being stronger allowed him to do that and play his game. I had so many questions about him athletically. What I learned is you can be, and I think McCain's probably a good example of this too. You can be a slower, unathletic player, but he got some of that girth. You got an ass. Like you can get by to your spots. And so when I was watching Burries this year, very rarely did I feel like he was too small on the court. I felt like he's a guy who's going to live in this 3-guard, new NBA and be that kind of player. So I liked his long-term value. And then I think people are really not noticing the season he had at Arizona. He was arguably their best player. And, I think a lot of people, and I think Swain was this way too. You watch the first 80% of the game and he's kind of just fitting in. If they needed him at the end of the game, he was the one. It wasn't Bradley bringing the ball up. It was Burries, and he was running the offense and taking the last shot. So I always liked him. I won't lie, on actual draft night when he went to the Bucks, didn't like that. I think it's a bad. He's just not very Bucks coded. I think the situation's going to end up being fine. I know they have Hero, they have Rollins. I think he's still going to get plenty of minutes and usage. And then Summer League happened and scared the shit out of me because he was arguably one of the best Summer League players this year that no one was really talking about. And so to find out later that Kev was considering him at 6 doesn't surprise me. Like I think Carg pushing back the draft, players like Burries who kind of slid under the radar for a while, suddenly after a good Summer League are in consideration for that top guard spot, especially with the way Acuff and Wagler played. But anyway, I don't want to harp on too long about Burries. I like him. I wanted a young guard. And I also wanted a center who I was able to get a few picks later through some trades. So it ended up working out for me. I was happy with the pick.
Yeah, the one thing I guess I'll elaborate there is like you hinted at us talking about this, and I talked about this mainly in the draft channel, is the concept that really changed my mind about a lot of players is looking at them through the lens of how are they impacting the advanced stats of a team as opposed to their individual advanced stats. And I think KD's a good example of this because like you and I look at KD and we're like, he doesn't pass much. He's a scorer, which, makes sense. But also a lot of times, like when KD's on the floor, a team's assist percentages, like a team's assist percentage or like the number of assists that they're having in a set amount of time can go up because you just pass the rock to KD and he makes a shot. So even though like maybe he's having like individually by himself, he's not having good assists, but if you have good team impact on the important categories, you're going to end up getting played more. And like, that's another situation where I'm like, depending on the team, of course, but like, I think that's where it's like important because if you're somebody that has good team influence in terms of like, when you're on the floor, your team is able to do X, Y, Z better. And when you're on the floor, your team is better. The NBA is going to play you more, and that means more fantasy opportunities to score. So I think this pick makes sense in terms of that for what you're saying. It's interesting you make the comp. I think that kind of makes like when you say it out loud to me, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. It's just one I haven't
like the player. I just think their transition to the league, right? Like I think he's going to have an easier time. Mikel's pretty thin. I think Acuff has some size. Wagler has a lot to do with his body, in the league. Fleming's, we'll see. I think he's strong, but he is slider. But Burries, he's not lightning quick, right? So he's going to have to be crafty. And I think you saw in Summer League, his body let him get through contact. I just value that so much more now. And who knows? It may not be something you can apply to every thicker guy every year. But I think if you see the craft, you see the feel, I think he's a good feel player. And then you add the size to it, like they're probably going to
Yeah.
do well year one.
Yeah. And then since you brought up Flemings, we can talk about that now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Flemings was the only other guy I was considering at 5 prior to sticking with Mikal. He's another guy that has elite team influence, which is similar to what we were just talking about with Burries. And Atlanta's a good roster, but they don't have a ton of playmaking outside of Jalen Johnson. And Kingston Flemings was probably the best playmaker in this draft to me. In terms of he doesn't have as many creative passes as Mikal does, but he's probably the best passing IQ player in this draft, like by a mile. He doesn't turn the ball over, and he has very high assist numbers. And then top it all off, he he's a winner, and he gets a ton of stocks.
Yeah.
And the issue is that he's a bit small, so there's like an inherent gamble there. And he can't shoot threes. Like you can't.
He doesn't shoot threes. I think he maybe can. It's the fact that he refuses to take them is where I'm a little like, what's going on here?
For me, at least, there's no difference. Like if you're not taking enough threes, in my mind, it's like you can't take threes. So but he's shown enough touch that you can make the case that he will end up being somebody that shoots a ton of threes, but that level of unknown was not enough for me to feel comfortable doing it. I think if he was bigger and the question was his shot, then it would have been an easier pick for me to make. Or if he was still small and made a ton of threes, that would be easier for me. But I think Kingston ended up going to Long John / Sightless, and I think for their team context, considering the direction they went with, I think this is great. I think this makes sense. And I guess we can talk about Wagler now. I'm surprised he went to, is it 11?
12. So it was Hans, Morez, and then Wagler.
Yeah, I guess I'm not going to harp too much on this. I'm like not a huge believer in Wagler.
I can make the pitch. I like him a bit more. Yeah.
It's just I feel like his team context was way too good for his production not to be better. That was my like main issue with him. Like he had the perfect like college basketball context for a guard, and I'm like, you should be better than this. Like you have everything, and you should be better. That was my main thing. But I think the other side of that would be the Halliburton case of like good things just happen when you're on the basketball floor. So
I think that's the kind of guy he is. I mean, I think my pitch, and I know Parm believes this, he's said it several times, and it's part of the graphic. Like, and this is true for Graves too. I posted a lot about this when he was the Sixers potential pick. Is some of these guys go to school and they don't know how good they really are yet, or how it's going to translate in their bodies. Yeah, there you go for Parm, Christian Anderson. I think in Wagler's case, the body is probably where he has the most work to do. And I think the feel, the skill, the context definitely elevates both of those things, right? I think he was a lot better as a freshman than anyone thought. His ranking is one example of that. I bet if you asked him the things he's doing to work on his body today, or even pre-draft, because obviously he's an NBA athlete now, so obviously his regimen changed. But like, I know Graves said this. He's like, I'm taking way better care of my body now than I was a year ago, because I thought I was going to have time, whether it's as a red shirt or whatever, to ease into it in college. So I would make that pitch for him. I was a really big Wagler guy. I've actually thrown some Halliburton comps out there. I do rescind a lot of that because their first step is so different. I think a lot of what makes Halliburton so good is that first step to create havoc in the lane. But Wagler does similar stuff once he's there. Like, I think how they get there is different. I think Wagler is so interesting because how he gets into the lane isn't through athleticism. It's the threat to shoot. The guy is a 3-point rate demon, and he's just going to chuck in the league, especially on a bad Clippers team that needs shooting. So I think if you're Parm, you're banking on that for fantasy points early. But that's going to be he's going to have games where he chucks 10 threes and only makes 2 of them. but that's how he's going to have to keep doing that because that's how he gets into the paint, right? It's that threat. And that's a tough player. You know, if you were betting real money on a guy and you're saying that's how he wins, that's a tough thing to bet on, but it can work. And we saw it work in college.
The one thing I'll add there before transitioning is that Darius Garland also doesn't play basketball. So
he's going to play so much. Wagler, that is, right? I mean, he has to.
Yeah, but also just like I don't believe Darius Garland is like alive. Like
it's
I think
not a factor at all for me.
Yeah, so like, which is why like I think we can talk about this a little bit later. But like I think that trade So Many Feathers did to get his 2027 pick back was a fucking robbery.
He did really
I don't know, like I don't know how anyone can bet on Darius Garland, considering like the major injury history, like turf toe, jaw broke, and then other just like consistent soft tissue injuries. Like you have to play basketball games at some point, and Darius hasn't done that in a while. And then the Clippers are not a good basketball team that have these vets that they clearly have no interest or nor do they care about them. Like, they don't give a fuck about Brandon Ingram. They don't give a fuck about Darius Garland.
No, their salary.
So it's like hard for me to be like to see the vision for how, and then on the other side of it, So Many Feathers is now back in control of his own future, which was so important for him.
Because he sold quite a bit in this draft, right? Between PG, Garland, I would still count that as a selling move, right? So to have your control of your draft moving forward, even if it's a weak draft, it just means so much. Like you and I have talked about this a little bit. It's freeing to not have your next year first because you're forced to compete and contend. But like there's some teams where if I'm forcing you to compete, like that's not in your best interest, right? Like your team's not good enough. And that's a team where it was getting older, it had injuries. I think he got a lot of negative feedback this year during the season on some of the moves he made. And I think he took that. I think he talked to some people. I thought there are some things like I do think he could have done better in my PG trade with him. But overall, where he set his team up to go, I thought he did a good job.
Yeah, and then the other thing also I think we often miss with So Many Feathers roster is that he dropped Denny Avdia when he found out he was a war criminal and a Zionist, which hats off SMF
for sure.
For doing that. Like much respect because
he was a contender before that. Like his team at that time was one of the top teams.
Yeah, and like when he picked Denny Avdia, like he didn't know that.
Right.
Like it wasn't like Denny Avdia's like history with the IDF was not like that public back then. But when he became a star in real life, it was like much more out there, and So Many Feathers dropped him. And he could have made the case for himself and in our league, like, hey, like he's really important to my roster, and I didn't know, so I don't want to drop him. But he didn't do that. He didn't try to argue against it. He like just went ahead and dropped him, which like much respect. And then he got put in the situation where his roster sucks. He dropped his best asset into the free agent pool. And before that he was contending. So I think like we should not forget that he picked his morals over winning in a fantasy league. And then he fixed that situation by making the savvy trades that he did on draft night to get control of his future back and also get young players in return. I don't think Darius Garland is a real player, so I think this was a layup in terms of getting your own pick back, because even if there's nobody good in the 2027 draft, that pick is going to be very valuable before the draft. Like people are going to give up some fucking bullshit for a high pick in the draft if they even if they don't believe in the player or even if they don't believe in the draft. So
you and I talked about that, and I'll expand on that. I do want to say we have breaking news related to Wagler. Is Max Strus is a Clipper, and what is actually a Peyton Watson trade. So I'll bury the lead there.
Wait, can you give me the
Cavaliers?
I will pull it up in a moment.
Nuggets and Clippers have agreed on a trade. Peyton Watson to the Cavs, Max Strus' salary to the Clippers, and then the Nuggets get a 2031 unprotected Cavs first and a 2032 Kings second. So obviously this is Denver not wanting to go to the second apron. Obviously horrible for them. I think for the Cavs, they get a little younger. It takes a little bit more pressure off James Harden, in my opinion. I'm not a huge Peyton Watson as a star, in plain sight, but I do think he's an interesting young player. And then for Strus to Clippers, I think these are the kind of guys long term you want to put next to Wagler. When you look at the team context that helped him win at Illinois, it's having guys like this on the court. So I actually for the Clippers to take him as salary, I think savvy by them. Their team's not really going anywhere, but these are the kind of moves that add up over time, right? So, what are your initial reactions?
I think Peyton Watson is fugazi. Like, this is the fakest shit of all time. Like, anybody who's actually, I think Peyton Watson to the Cavaliers is probably so there are three players in the league where I'm like, if you're playing with this guy, I do not believe in jack shit that you're doing on the basketball floor. Jokic, Luka, James Harden. If you're playing with these guys, Joel Embiid also, yes. But also, unfortunately, does not play much basketball, so I'm not going to count him. But, like, if you're playing with these guys, like, I don't believe in anything that you do because you are playing with, like, a basketball singularity. Like, you are playing with a rocket ship while everyone else is playing with bicycles. So I don't think Peyton Watson's a real player. I think he's a PRA farmer, which might be good for our league. But I think he can do some of the things that he was doing with Jokic, with Harden. So
I was going to say, he is playing with Harden, right? So that helps.
But also Harden's getting older. So
yeah,
I understand this for the Cavaliers. It's funny that the Nuggets are in this situation. Actually, it's that you getting a first for Peyton Watson is pretty good work.
And a sign-in trade, for those that aren't aware, you get nothing in sign-in trades ever, usually. This is almost comparable to what the Heat got in a LeBron sign-in trade back, when they set up the Heatles. So, this is a pretty good return for them. The caveat being, you have Jokic, you're supposed to be competing, right? And you're letting this contract, which you can argue high-low for Watson. From a Nuggets point of view, though, you have Jokic. And if this guy is playing really good basketball with them, I'm looking at the lineup data. They crush teams when the two of them are on the court together. So, to lose this guy because of the second apron isn't great.
Stinks.
But also, having a first-round pick is probably a better asset for you than Peyton Watson.
If you do something with it, it's a little bit of kicking the can down the road because now can you use Cam Johnson's salary? Can you use Aaron Gordon's salary with the pick? For sure. Yeah. But it's a Cavs first. I mean, who knows how good or bad they're going to be in 2031 without Demon Ganzi. But, they are looking to be pretty good for a little bit.
I think this is good work by the Clippers. And I think probably also something that held us up is the Kawhi situation. But let's move along with the draft. I'm sure Parm is itching to hear about what we think about him drafting Yaxel.
Yeah, let's talk about the three bigs because it's three bigs kind of clustered in this five guard, right? So Yaxel. I was shocked too. But go ahead.
I was shocked because I thought I had maybe had a chance to get back in there potentially by trading with Koob or somebody else, but Yaxel at 7. I think there was a real case to be made that he was the second best player in the draft. The only thing that I would caveat there is that if he didn't go to the Warriors, I think it would be easier for me to make that case because he's just not going to get the kind of usage that maybe he deserves to flourish into the player that he could be. But this is a basketball Swiss Army knife. That he can literally do everything. Before going into his last year of college, draft scouts basically said, we need you to shoot threes. And he became one of the best shooters in college for his position / height. And then also, if you look at his history, he started basketball late. And then he just plays 12 hours of 2K, which is funny, because it's you go to school, you play basketball, you come home, you play 2K. But it's also a way to get mental reps with basketball without putting your body at risk, which is pretty much what Jaden Daniels does when he's doing his practice. So
it's VR quarterbacking.
Yeah, which like,
hey, we did that in high school. Like soccer in America, right? Okay, we have a crowd reaction. Yeah,
nope.
I mean, I don't like that because I basically said the same thing. But I mean, it's true, right? Like they should have paid to keep him, but we had to play FIFA in high school for the soccer team because we didn't know shit about soccer, and so our coach was like, "We'll play a video game and it'll teach you." And for someone who's new to a sport, especially, these games are helpful, and getting these reps and teaching you, how to high level 2K players, you're playing off tendencies and ratings of the players you're matching up against. So like there's value there, but it is funny that that's what he said. It got him really into basketball.
Yeah. But I think this is a great player. I think obviously like perfect basketball player. The only thing you can knock against him is his age. And like people are always like, oh, he's so old. That means he's not good. But it's like, there's a ton of college players that are old and they're not good. They're not this good. And Yaxel could have gone lottery last year and he just didn't.
And he won a title as the best player on the team. Like, what more could you have asked for him going back?
On a fucked up knee, by the way. He played through injury during that whole thing. Like, so, like, I don't know. This is a great player. And I'm just surprised. I think what was surprising to me is that Parm went for it.
I think yes. So I definitely thought this was Wagler here. He ends up getting Wagler later, which we talked about. That was the surprising part to me. I do think it was surprising at the time that that's the type of player he took. And I mentioned this earlier, though. You look at his team, it's so volatile, like I said. And so to get a player who, yes, he has Steve Kerr as his coach, as a rookie, and he's dealing with Draymond trying to murder him via podcast. But like, I do think he's going to play. I think he's enough of a Swiss Army knife from a fantasy perspective. He's going to get rebounds. He's going to get assists. He's going to get stocks, right?
And then Jimmy Butler tore his ACL.
Jimmy Butler
well,
back.
So
well, yeah. But when he's back, though,
starting.
Yeah. Well, so he's going to play usage bump, and then when Jimmy's back, I think they play together really nicely too. And Jimmy, in my opinion, is not the same level as a Jokic or Harden, but he's a guy that improves the lineup when he's there. Yeah. So I think Yaxel will benefit from that. So I commend Parm. I thought this was a swing, but I think his team needed it. A little bit of a steady Eddie after trading an Edie. I thought this was a good pick for him.
Yeah. And then we can talk about Hans, which was the next surprise for me.
That was a surprise. And I was pissed. So if you don't mind, I'll I was targeting Hans. Like that was the guy I wanted. And I originally traded up early in the draft. So like we're not even on pick 2 or 3. And I've moved from 17 up to 14. And my thought process was Hans should fall because everyone hates on him in our draft channel on the Discord. I'm going to go up and get him. I think he's the best center left. I like Morez, but for whatever, I just really liked Hans. And so,
I can tell you why. Like he's a tall guy that grabs rebounds and chucks threes in Charlotte, who love chucking threes.
Yeah.
Perfect context.
He's so athletic in that spaced out system. Like I think he's going to cook there. So I like this was a great pick for me. I think Koob is someone that isn't talked about enough. I know you talk about it, but Koob's a good drafter, man. I mean, sometimes it's just taking the Philly guard who ends up working out, but he's a good drafter, and I was really surprised by this. And I think what took me off guard is Koob isn't a volume poster, and so like I was thinking no one likes Hans. Well, Koob wasn't given draft takes in February. Like I don't know what Koob thinks about Hans Steinbeck, right? Yeah. So this caught me off guard, and it proceeded to make me trade up to 11. So this pick actually ended up having a lot of impact downstream. But I love this pick. I love the player. I love the fit. I think some people with him, when I was doing my research on him, are a little worried about the center room and like if he'll get minutes. They don't have a whole lot of like asset value tied into the other bigs on the roster. And with LaMelo gone, I think some of what made those guys viable is maybe gone now. And I think Hans is going to be a good example of what kind of big is going to play well in that system without LaMelo there to raise it up.
So I think Charlotte is a good example. And I think there's a couple teams in the league that do this is they do bigs by committee where they have 3 medium level bigs, let's say, and 0 high level bigs. And this can be good because bigs are injury prone inherently. Like, you're 7 feet tall, you're not meant to be that tall. Your body is going to break down. Like, that's just like an inherent fact of existence. So there are some teams that do bigs by committee with a bunch of like mid-high level guys. And I think they have 3 guys who can all be good. Like Kalk, Diabate, and Hans are 3 good examples. I think all 3 of them are going to get minutes. And I think with Hans shooting, you could sometimes do double big if you really need to, because some teams in the league kind of trend that way. So this does open you up for that a little bit. Great pick by Koob, and I don't know how I'm the only one that sings his praises. Which, by the way, Sal, if you can pull up that trade graphic with the trades of like how many trades each person did,
look
so
at
Koob is all the way at the bottom at 7.
Yeah.
So he doesn't make a ton of trades, but
he didn't make a single trade last year.
No,
yeah, that's crazy.
But if you look at his roster, it's all young guys. He has more picks coming in the future, and he's already decent. That's really hard to do. Like, if you have almost exclusively young guys, being decent is really hard to do. And he has more picks coming in the future. And he did that. Like, I'm kind of in that position now, but I was sucking for 3 years. He never sucked. And I can see why some people are like, oh, he hasn't won anything yet, so why does it matter? But you just have to look at this. And like, he had 2 picks this draft, and he traded down. He got Hans, he traded down, and then he got Zuby, another big. And I believe I think that was it, right? I think that might have been it. I think that might have been it for Koob. Oh, and he also got Conwell at 30.
Yeah, he got Conwell, which, I mean, that's him going to the Heat. Like, I like Conwell a lot. That team fit, though, like, I think has a lot of fantasy importance there too. Like, and then he got Caravan, who I don't love, but
it's the Kings.
Right?
He could end up playing 40 minutes a night. So I don't know. But
and he got your boy Copeland.
Yeah, I mean, Copeland, I don't think will get a ton of minutes this year.
No,
I'm not going to count that. But like, Koob is like, I don't think people realize how hard it is to be in the position that he is in, and I recognize why that is, because it's a very short-term focused league for the most part when we're doing general discussions about who's good and who's not. But
it's a 20-team league, man. I think people forget that sometimes. This isn't a normal fantasy league. There are 20 teams, and the way it works is there's going to be 4 to 5 teams, really 3 to 4, with a ton of the high-end talent, especially now that we're a few years in. Everyone's path to get to there is going to be different. It's not like a 10-man fantasy football league where you can just trade for the right guy and go make a move, right? I think teams like Koob are a great example of how unique this league structure is and the different ways to get to where you want to go. And I love the example of like comparing him to you, where you're kind of trending in the same direction, but you did it 2 very different ways. It's interesting.
Sorry, I fucking hate DeMar DeRozan so much. Fuck this guy. But also, all of a sudden, his value just fucking went way up because Jamal Murray, another guy who doesn't play basketball, DeMar DeRozan, a guy that does play basketball.
Yeah, he'll get fantasy points there in Denver.
Let's go.
Sure. Who has DeMar?
Go.
Right, Sal. That's why we're celebrating. I thought you were just a big DeMar guy, but no, you have him.
But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your point, Brennan.
That's the point. I think that's forgotten, and I think that's something we can talk about more in future pods or whoever gets on the pod. This is a unique league, and I think this chart highlights that, of how there's so many different ways to get to where you want to go. And I don't want to use the progress isn't linear, famous quote, but it is true. What is a good season and good progress for one team in this league isn't the same for another. And Koob's just a good example of that.
And then we can actually take that to talk about Merez and also talk about your Chet trade, because I think both are connected. In my mind, at least, they're connected.
They were, yeah. Go ahead.
We talked about this right before we got into this, but I think centers have become really important in this draft. So again, by the way, Koob quietly picked up 2 of the 5 best centers in this draft.
Yeah.
He picked up Hans and Yuzubi. But just that aside. Morez was probably the best center in the top 10, apart from Boozer, which I don't think should count for this discussion because he wasn't available on the board for anybody else. You traded up for Morez, and I think based on our discussion before the draft, and also me mentioning it early in the draft, I think getting a center in this draft was probably important for a lot of people. You didn't believe in Chet anymore, so trading.
I was tired
Chet,
of picking the games. Yeah, I was tired of picking the games.
So trading Chet for Tatum it's a great swing. And then I think we should actually talk about the Tatum trade in connection with the other picks you made. So you pick Senac at 20.
Yeah.
No.
Later.
You pick Senac at 27. You get Tatum. You trade Chet for Tatum. You actually let me do this in order. You trade up for Morez. That gives you a center. That allows you to move Chet. You trade Chet for Jason Tatum. And then you draft Senac at 27, and then you make a trade for Paul George. And then
which
you
kudos
also draft
to you
Sturge.
Is your idea. I don't make that trade if you don't recommend it.
Happy to be a service, because I was also granted. I was also telling SMF. I was talking to SMF before the draft, and I was like, if I were in your position, I'd probably try to tank and get young players in the process. And
which he had been trying to do before that too. Like he just traded James Harden earlier at the deadline.
It's just hard to do when no one's trading, and the best time to do that is before the draft. And so I think the stars aligned. But for you, I think getting Morez opened up Chet. I think Morez is in a good situation because Derek Lively doesn't play the game. Morez Johnson does play the game, and he gets to play with one of the, also not real. Like he also gets injured a ton, by the way. Sneakily, very injury prone guy, and also old. And they've also been trying to trade him for a while. And they have Dusty May, who's going to love playing Morez.
That was part of it for me. Like that was part of the pick. Like I like Morez the player a lot. Like when he was potentially going to fall to the Sixers, that was my guy. He's a winner. He's got great motor, great heart, and he can kind of do everything on the court. You know, for his size at least, right? And then Dusty May takes him, what some people thought early, right, in the real draft. So you combine all of that. I think they want to play flag more around the perimeter than in the paint. And so I think they're not going to be on top of each other, which is good. So, and they're going to get Kyrie back this year. So I think they're going to get better guard play, which should open up for Morez as well. So all of that kind of went into that pick.
Yeah. So the one thing I'll add there is Morez also lets them do Cooper roam better. Like I think Cooper as a defender is not that good on ball, but as a roamer, he's very, very good. So I think having Morez to protect the paint really opens up a lot for them. So you get Morez, you trade up for Morez, you do what you thought was an overpay to get Morez. You get Morez.
I'm fine with it, by the way. I know I said that, and I'm just sorry. I just want to add context as we go through it. I was fine. Like I offered this straight up to Kev, and I will be. I don't know how many of these pods I'll get to be on, but like, I do not like the 2027 draft, and so to me, yes, in a vacuum is the 14th pick plus a future first to go up to 11. Is that really great value? Probably not. But I don't really believe in that draft next year. And is Ballers 2027 first? Like, so the 18th best player, right? Like, kind of at best, I think Ballers team's still going to be really good this year. To move up, I like that trade. So I think some people see it as an overpay. But, like, when you look at a Corey going at 14, like, in hindsight, if I didn't make this trade, man, I don't feel nearly as good about my center room, right? So anyway, I just want to add that context.
No, yeah. I'll also, like, with the overpay thing, I'm quoting you. I'm not saying that. Like, I'm quoting you.
But people think that. Then, like, I was getting some critiques, for that.
Yeah. So going back to what I was saying, you do Chet for Tatum then, which inherently, like, you don't like Chet, you don't like picking for him. From Sightless's perspective, she gets to now pick for. She gets to now get younger, and you have Chet on your roster. You just got Kingston Flemings. Getting younger in Long John and Sightless's situation is a great position to be in, and they've been wanting to do something like that for a while. You get Tatum, which lets you flip and go contending mode because you don't own your own pick next year. I don't think off the top of my head.
I traded it to you. That's the read. No, never mind. I traded it for Quickly. Which I don't want to talk about with you. I'll talk about that with anyone else but you.
But you're contending now because you're already in my mind, you're already contending. The second you get Tatum, you don't have any picks next year. You already made some picks this year. You're contending because you were already in a decent position coming into this.
I had young players, but I needed that guy that could get 50, 60 points, right? Like when you look at the teams that are in the finals in our league, it's Will, Baller, Samuel, Flop. They have honestly, I need another one. They're just so hard to get. You need a guy that can put up 60 points. You just do.
Yeah.
And how often is Chet doing that, right? And that was the kind of, yes, I did sour him as a player, but in fantasy, I do think he's still a good asset. Like I don't want to kind of crap on him because sightless. I do think there's value in adding him to that team, but he's a guy that is just part of the group. He's not the guy leading the group. Whereas Tatum for me is now a guy that'll lead that group. And making a trade like the Quickly trade, part of that was me thinking, let me just get a bunch of guys that hover around 30 points a game in fantasy, and then I can add a Tatum to this, and now I have a guy that can score 60 on top of that, right? So that was kind of the thought process through it all.
Yeah. And so adding on to the Tatum of it all, obviously he's coming off an Achilles tear and he's very good and he's going to be the main guy. But he's coming off an Achilles tear, which is an injury risk, and also he is pretty good at playing with a forward. Like even if you look at a lot of Jaylen Brown's highlights, like Tatum is involved. Like he's there, he's helping a lot. Tatum is very good with the next forward. And so you getting Chris Senek, who is going to be playing for like Boston has a pretty good rotation already, but they also are pretty good about playing their young guys. So
I think they need him too. I mean, he needs to toughen up a bit to play what they need. I think that's his biggest criticism, right? Is the way he uses his body, not the body itself. I think Missoula's the guy. Like that's part of why I took him, is I think Missoula can get that out of him. They need that though. Like when Baller talked about this a ton going into the playoff matchup. If Joel Embiid was healthy, we were going to beat them because they just didn't have a body that could put up with that kind of force, right? And Joel Embiid, fresh off the surgery table, still bodied them because they didn't have that big. And the Knicks were able to body it back. So I think he'll play, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree, especially because you then also get Paul George, who has good synergy with Tatum in fantasy, because if Tatum gets injured, then Paul George will get more minutes. Conversely, if Paul George gets injured, Chris Senek gets more minutes. So you basically got the three best forwards or the three most important forwards for the Boston Celtics rotation.
Yeah.
Which is great.
It's a great fantasy environment. I mean, you look at all their guys, they put up decent fantasy numbers.
Yeah. And so credit to myself here. I think it was a great idea. It's a trade that makes sense for both sides because you traded Cason Wallace, who's a good young player who's due to get paid. So there's a good chance that OKC can't pay him and he goes somewhere where he gets an opportunity to be more consistent fantasy-wise, while also being a decent fantasy producer right now for OKC. So I think that's a great trade for SMF in the position that he was in, because if Paul George gets like not enough playtime, or if he gets another injury where he's missing X amount of games, it's really bad for him because Paul George's trade value goes down the second the season starts. Additionally, it makes sense for you because there's direct synergy with Senek and Tatum, like we just talked about. So I think those three trades in like all together are great for you.
Yeah, and the starts of it all. Getting that pick back for Sturts is the cherry on top for me.
Yeah, which like you and I have talked about this over DMs, but I believe in Sturts heavily. So I think this is like great work for you in this draft overall. Making that transition is like really hard, and I think you leveraged the situation you were in very well, and also like getting these deals over the line on draft night is also difficult because it's easy for me to say like strike while the iron's hot, but it's like people are not always willing to make those deals. So I think you did a great job.
Yeah, I'll put a bow on it just by saying what I feel good about the transition is I was able to do it all with 2027 picks. I only traded one 2028 second, and it was an extra one I had. And so that's what made it easier for me to go all in here is I'm basically punting a draft I don't believe in. I still have all of my picks in 2028 and then all 2029 and then eventually all 2030, right? So Yeah, I think that pretty much sums up all of my picks, puts a bow on my draft. I'm excited about it. We got to play the games, right? So that's the next step.
Off-season champion.
Yeah. We do take those, because the Sixers are off-season champions too. But you got to play the games, so we'll see. And our division's tough. Like we probably won't end up having time to get to it today. Definitely a next pod conversation, probably.
Absolutely.
But our division's tough, man, especially after the 2 drafts you and I had.
Yeah. I'm gonna kind of speed through some of these picks here because I don't know that there's much to say about all of them. So it went Kingston at 9, Hans at 10, Morez at 11, Keaton at 12, which was a heist considering the draft slot. Considering that Keaton was a top 5 pick in the real league, getting him at 12 is inherent value. Parm also believes in Keaton, so I think this is a good pick. We've already talked about him, so I'm not going to go over it too much, but I just wanted to mention that. Nate Ament at 13, which is like his real-life draft slot. I don't think he's a player. I think he's funny looking. I'm not going to talk about this more other than I don't think he's going to matter. Ibuka Okori to Kev at 14. This is the pick that you were talking about. Ibuka Okori, where did he go? He went to Pistons, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a good position for him because if Cade gets injured, which he has done in the past with his shin injury, which was pretty major, and then he transitioned to veganism, and he has been fine since. But he also had the collapsed lung last year.
Yeah.
So I think the injury concerns are real here. Also considering the amount of time he plays and how much he has the ball when he's doing that. I think it's a good pick by Kev, but I think probably a bit of a reach for me. I think he probably could have gotten a starter at this slot. Actually, I'm looking at the full list, and there's no starters.
The guy would have been Mara, I think.
Yeah.
I think the only thing you could really hit him on is maybe the positional value of Mara. But I like Okori. I think the biggest question with Okori is he's such an on-ball guy next to Cade. Like, let's say Cade doesn't get hurt, and he's playing 35 minutes a game. What does Okori's role really look like, right? But I like the player, so I like the pick.
Yeah,
and he got an additional first for this, which you have to include that, right?
True, because he doesn't have his own pick next year, which we covered earlier in the pod. Yeah. So getting a pick back next year is actually pretty important for his in his situation. Cameron Carr at 15. I think this is an overdraft. Baller did tell me that this was somebody that he really liked before the draft, so I wasn't surprised by this. But he did also mention that Cameron Carr slid a bit because his agent played the game, and he shares the same agent as Luka Doncic. So I think there's some like other additional stuff going here. I think the big thing I'll say here is that he got his guy. And even if I don't personally believe in the fantasy value here, I can see the case for a player. Like I can see the case for Cameron Carr, the player. And if you believe in the player long term, then I guess this makes sense. I
think he's pretty low feel, but I think he's playing off. I think the Luka of it all is really what's going to make or break this pick. He's so athletic. That guy can shoot. I think to me, he's really just kind of a movement shooter to me that maybe will play defense. He's got the body for it. Now, if you told me I can draft a super athletic movement shooter who will probably play good perimeter defense on a Luka team, you're probably buying on that guy. So we'll see. I don't love the player, but I think the Luka of it all is what could make this for Baller.
Yeah, this is kind of a peak Baller pick to me, where I'm like, this is a very fun guy that I think got overdrafted, which is probably the same thing I would say for Hudson Young last year. And also probably not what I personally would have done in Baller situation. That said, I'm not in Baller situation. I could never be in Baller situation.
He got this. It's really Isaiah Collier for Cameron Carr. And the position.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
There's the Collier of it all too. So you can't help but say Baller did well here. You got your guy for a guy that's gonna have way less minutes this year. So
worst trade of the fucking year, by the way. I'm gonna say that. Like I'm gonna say that's the worst trade of the year. The Isaiah Collier for pick 15, worst trade of the year by far.
That's peak Baller. That's why I think, and I do want to kind of speed up, so I won't harp on this, but I think people talk a lot about Baller's team being old and maybe investing in his future picks. I definitely did this. These are the trades he makes. Like he does this every year, multiple times. So they're second most active trader. I will never bank on Baller being bad until it happens, because he always pulls a rabbit. I think he's doing a good job, even if I'm a little annoyed by it because I like some of the players. He's holding a high price on his vets. He's trying to do both things. So I think this is the perfect example of Baller, the fantasy player, of probably why he's never going to be a bad fantasy player.
Yeah. Like I think we covered this early in the draft, but a lot of respect for Baller as like an operator overall. I'm not sold on him as a drafter as of right now. That might change. But Mara at 16, we've talked about the difficulty with picking games for OKC players. That's not Shea. He might not get much playtime because he's behind Hartenstein and Chet. That said, he's also a tall guy in a conference that he plays against Wemby, and Chet can get injured quite often, as can Isaiah Hartenstein sneakily. And he would get played over J-Will. And there's also a chance they do double big.
And I don't believe in Sorber. I like Sorber, but until he plays and I see what his minutes are and how he bounces back, like, it's not a real player to me.
Yep, same situation as JQ for me. So, I think this is a fine pick. I don't think there's much to say on this other than that the fantasy floor is shaky because of the fact that he's in OKC.
Yes and no. I don't want to harp on it either, but I do think he's going to be a rebounds guy. I think he's going to be like a 2 to 3, 4 assists center. I don't think he's ever going to be a points guy, but I do think he could be a sneaky 10-10 and then a handful of assists and a stock, depending on the minutes. I'm talking like long term, not year one. So I think to get that kind of guy who's a true center at 16, I do think that's pretty good value for. Let's again not forget the center situation in our league overall there. So I think it's pretty good, like you said. So LeBaron at 17 for SMF. This is good value, I think, overall. You get the Philly guy. He'll have trade value, but how much is he going to play?
The guard room is rough, but also like getting a Philly guy in this league is kind of free eats. Like if you get a Philly guy, you're guaranteed to have somebody overpay. And like historically with Philly, actually, knock on wood, but hopefully no one gets injured in Philly ever. But also like if somebody does get injured, then it's pretty guaranteed that he'd get play time. Also, there's a good chance he's on the trade block because LeBron's there. True. So he might go to a better situation too. Also, he's a good player. So I think LeBron will be fine.
He was taken in our draft where he probably should have gone on the low end of the real draft. So I don't buy the fantasy outlook for him short term, but if you're banking on the player at 17, you can't criticize it too much.
Yeah. So I think we're pretty late in the time here. So I guess, but I'm not going to go over the rest of the picks, but I think maybe we should spend some time talking about Ty's situation.
So Ty is interesting, and I was waiting to say we kind of skipped over Nasty Nate Ament. I think what's interesting about Ty's situation is he keeps stockpiling picks, but then he's drafting guys he doesn't like. 1, the league doesn't like. 2, and 3 really aren't that interesting. I mean, I do like Swain, but like for his team, what's really the point here? And I think Ty should have taken. I think a lot of people were trying to buy picks in this draft, and Ty ended up being one of them, weirdly. And I don't think he should have been. Now, I would also say, I could see his mindset being, everyone thinks this is a good draft. I'm just going to take a bunch of guys in this draft, and hopefully one of them sticks, because he's kind of just throw stuff at the wall territory now. But Ty,
he didn't have to be in that territory though.
No,
he put himself in that situation. You had the first pick. You had a guaranteed guy.
Yeah.
You took yourself out of that situation and put yourself in a situation where you're throwing a bunch of darts.
Yeah. To take a guy he doesn't like, right? Because that's this pick. That's Swain. He's already trying to trade Swain. And this is really the value he got to move from 1 to 2.
Which, like, dude, I don't understand it. Because, like, I guess I kind of do understand it, because it was interesting. I was trying to read up on game theory, specifically also trying to focus on like the dynasty aspect of it. And I read this thing that was basically like, when you're in a dynasty league, a lot of players straight up just don't think about the future, which I don't think is that true for our league anymore. But for the longest time, the first 2 years, like nobody would think about the future. And I think part of that kind of makes sense because you don't know how long the league is going to last. But now we've established ourselves that we're going to exist. So people are starting to think about the future more. So I think that's not true for our league. That said, the bar for thinking about the future was low in year one. So it was easy for me to think ahead. Like, I'm not going to be able to be good enough considering my draft slots. I'm going to tank. That was easy back then. The things you have to think about now to think ahead into the future is so difficult because I have to look at like how many centers are there in the 2027 draft and how is that going to impact who I draft later in the draft this year. That is so much fucking work to do to think ahead. But also, like, that said, it's very easy to look at the number of players that are allowed on a roster and the number of picks you have, and it just puts you in such. I was in this position a while ago. It puts you in a very difficult position when you're trying to do trades with people, because if you're trying to trade for a really good player, because like if you're trying to trade for a really good player and you have a ton of picks, people will just be like, just throw another pick in there. Just throw another pick in there. Who cares? You have so many. Just give me another pick. It's fucking impossible. You did this to me with the JJJ trade.
Yeah.
You just
keep
saying throw a guy in there.
Yeah.
And but then the other side of it is like, I appreciate throwing darts, but you didn't have to be in that position. No. Which again, I say all this with the caveat that excellent trading business, like just like elite negotiator. But I don't know how he put himself in this situation where he's picking Nate Ament, Dalen Swain, Malik Thomas, good player, but Malik Thomas.
Yeah, but Cleveland, what's his, especially after the trade tonight too. What's his fantasy outlook look like?
Yeah, five picks in the first round by Ty. Caleb Wilson, Nate Ament, Dalen Swain, Malik Thomas. Wait, where's the fifth one? I'm missing one. Dalen Swain. Wait, don't. 4, 5?
Nate, Swain, Malik.
Nate and Caleb. Nate, Swain,
so
Caleb.
Just 4, right?
Yeah, 4. Still.
And then you got Josh Jefferson later. But yeah.
Yeah, but like, which would be fine if he had less players that he cares about on his roster. It's just impossible to trade some of these guys on his roster now. And because like everyone's just like, I'll just wait for him to cut him.
Yeah, or just get untenable. Like Jordan Poole, for example. I mean, Sal, if you just keep waiting, I mean, at what point to sell him? You know what I mean? Like he should have already done that because that price is going to keep going down. So I'm anxious to see. Ty has talked to me a lot on the side of my team. What should I do? I do think he had the right idea of waiting till draft night to make moves. I just didn't love in a vacuum, each of the trades he made, he did get good value. But when you look at the sum of the parts, like some of it all, I don't love it. And I have his team up right now. Like his best prospects, who's going to carry his team? It's Matas, Mobley, Caleb, AJ Mitchell. And then it's a bunch of guys you're just hoping hits. And even those top guys, how many of them do you think are going to be bona fide fantasy starters, 3 years from now? Maybe all of them, but I don't know at the same time.
It's and this is another reason why as a league we should appreciate Coob more, because I think we're a very transaction focused league, so we don't really do it as much, but it's very hard to have a vision and then fulfill it. Ty, elite transactions here from start to end. Like every transaction individually, like you said, in a vacuum, great value. But when you're asking me like what's like who's the guy, that comes from having like the vision and like sticking to it, which is like really hard to do because you have to decide that years in advance. But also like it's hard for me to hate on it because Ty has $1 billion assets, so
he can afford it.
Will still be,
I mean, you look at the assets and they're kind of hit or miss. Like he has 4 2027 firsts, but it's Peyton, Sal, me, and then his own. His own will for sure be good. Sal will see with you, but like I think Peyton has a pretty decent, like he's a playoff team in my opinion. I think I have a playoff team. So a weak draft and 2 of your 4 are kind of iffy. And then 2028, he has a baller first, a sauce first, and then his first. So that's really but you're talking 2 years from now to maybe draft, lottery luck and get a good guy. It's just tough for me. But we'll see. I do think he makes savvy trades. I mean, he got 2 firsts from me for IQ. I think he originally sold Drummond for decent. He makes good trades. It's just the strategy moving forward. So we'll see.
Yeah,
I do think, guys. I mean, do you want to stop with the tie stuff? I won't lie. I would like to do another pod eventually. The other part of the draft. I still have more takes.
We
haven't
haven't
kind of
talked
want to
about
end
the
with a
playoff
tie.
picture yet. Yeah.
Yeah, we can always save that for a season preview too.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about the tie stuff because I was just I like wrote down all the picks that happened, and I just keep seeing we talked about this on draft night.
He kept buying picks, man. I know you're probably going here, but we were in voice chat and it was like late second round, and Ty's like, "Give me that pick." What are you doing? What are you trying to get picks for? You don't have room for them.
Yeah, you know what it really reminded me of is actually the Rockets in the 2021 draft, because we went Jalen Green, Şengün, which is like 2 mistakes there, some would say, and then you dip back in. Granted, we were trying to trade those picks away, but you dip back in for Usman Garuba and Josh Christopher. It just gets to a point where you're like, this is too much fucking shit. Or the Nets draft, actually.
The Nets last year. Yeah, the Nets last year.
Igor Demon, Drake Powell, Nolan Traore.
Julian Reese. Oh,
Cam
Julian
Whitmore.
Reese off his 2-way. Sal, I think that could be a 6 or 2-way right there.
There we go.
But no, actually, Cam Whitmore is the most important thing in that trade.
You think so?
When you think about it. Well, he gets to play with. He's a chucker that gets to play with Keaton Wagler.
My question is, where the hell does Kuminga go now?
Well, aren't the Cavs getting Cam Whitmore?
Am I reading this wrong? The Cavaliers are sending Trey Mann, the 2027 second rounder, from the Clipper. Oh my God! And cash the Washington Wizards for Cam Whitmore.
Cam's not going to play in Cleveland.
No, he's not. It's over.
But Julian Reese, for the Sixers fans listening to the podcast, I'm saying it now. I think that'll be your 2-way. I think that'll be it. And I think that'd be a solid get. He put up decent numbers in Mickey March last year.
I think the Nuggets are going to keep Julian Reese.
It says they'll waive him off the 2-way.
I just can't read. I can't read.
You're reacting to too much at a time.
I'm like, well, in my head, I'm like, I don't even know why you'd waive him, because one of their backup centers is fucking the guy coming off the Achilles tear, Darren Holmes, who was a great prospect, by the way.
He came back though last year, and I thought he looked pretty good actually. So maybe
who's their third?
Maybe they're
center?
fine with that. I don't have to pull it up.
Because I don't think the Nuggets should get rid of Julian Reese.
Oh, they have Bagley. That's why they got Bagley.
Oh, Bagley's pretty good. So never mind.
Yeah, so they have Jokic, Holmes. They tried to get off in Najee all winter, summer. They couldn't do it, so he's still there.
Najee Harris.
And then you have, Bagley. Oh, and they drafted Brazil, who we'll talk about on the second draft pod because I took him and I have a lot of takes. I get why they're doing it. I agree with you. They probably shouldn't, especially because he came on a 2-way. Like, why wouldn't you not just keep him on the 2-way?
It costs nothing.
I hope Gansey's on the phone.
Yeah. But yeah, the reason I want to bring up the tie stuff is because I think it kind of Ty's trades played a role in everyone's story on draft night, because he made so many trades.
He was the protagonist.
And I think it's important to talk about because he now on draft night and in the future his fingers are everywhere. Because he has, if you go to his picks, he owns every team's pick in some capacity, which is, I think, really important because when you own somebody else's pick, you have a lot of leverage over them to get a player on their roster. But I can call it there. I could talk about our league all night.
I was gonna say, you could go 5 hours on the league. I do want to come back to the draft and then tie it all back to where the league stand. But I think we did a good job the first half of the draft, not just who the player was, but the trade's impact and what it means for the league moving forward.
Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
We didn't even get to Falk grades.
Oh shit.
We didn't even do a Falk grade section. We need to do that in another pod too.
We're gonna need Falk on.
Yeah.
I somehow have a renowned respect for ESPN analysts because this shit is hard to do when you're like looking at everybody. Like, I feel really bad. I didn't even talk about Daniel getting Graves.
Yeah, we'll do it on the next pod.
Time, but
we will be back.
Yeah. All right.
Well, Sal, thanks for setting this up.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't do shit. Thank you, gentlemen, for the insightful analysis.
This is what our DMs looks like. This is me and VJ on like a Monday at 11 a.m.
Yeah. We're both skipping work to talk about our league.
Yeah.
Let's fucking go. We will be back, folks. When that will be, I don't know. We'll figure it out. But
yeah, Sal made a big move. Congrats to Sal.
Thank you all.
Sal, Brennan, and VJ will return in Avengers Doomsday.
No, dude. But for now, good night. Whatever.